Hello guys, welcome back. Today we're going to take a look at solving equations, multiplication and division equations today, also using fractions. Okay, so very similar to what we did in the last video, except now instead of addition and subtraction, it's multiplication and division equations. So again, I know you're looking at this and you're like, if I see that board one more time, I'm going to scream. Well, warn somebody because you're going to scream tomorrow, you're going to see it again. So the first thing to remember when we're solving equations, we want to keep them balanced. Whatever we do to one side, we do to the other. And we're trying to isolate the variable, get it by itself. So how are we going to do that? Well, we're going to undo the operations that we see happening. Now, here is just something that's a little bit different. When we're dividing, when we have a multiplication equation, which we would normally undo by dividing, what I'm going to tell you now, just to save yourself a step, is rather than dividing by a fraction, which we rewrite as multiplication by multiplying, I like to make up words sometimes, multiplicating, it's a new one, by multiplying the inverse or the reciprocal. So what I'm going to tell you to do to save time is we're just going to multiply by the reciprocal rather than doing the division and constantly rewriting it. So if it's a multiplication equation, we're still going to multiply to solve it, but we're going to multiply by the reciprocal of the number instead of dividing by the same number. All right? It gives us the exact same thing as I showed you down here. All right? 2 divided by 2 is 1. 2 times 1/2. 1/2 is the reciprocal of 2, is also 1. So it's the same thing. It'll give us the same answer. So here right away you'll notice we have a multiplication one. So I'm going to tell you right now, instead of saying we're going to divide by 3/4, what we're going to do is we're going to multiply by its inverse. And I'm going to erase my number here so we can get it away. And what you'll notice, when I do this multiplication on this side, everything would cancel. 4 and 4, 1 and 1, so I'd be left with 1x, which is what I want. Okay? That's why we're doing it. The 4 is the 4, the 3 is the 3. I'm just left with 1. 1x. That's what I want to have. Okay? So rather than writing the division and rewriting it, we're simply just going to write it as multiplying the inverse. Now, 12 is a whole number, so I'm just going to write the 1 underneath it so I don't get confused. Again, I can actually cancel out here early. 3 goes into 3 once, 3 goes into 12 4 times. You'll notice I have 1s on the bottom, which means that my answer is going to be a whole number. Anything over 1 is itself. 4 times 4 gives me 16. So my answer is 16. And again, we can go back, we can check that. 16 times 3/4 gives me 12, so I know that I'm right, okay? I always want you to check these on quizzes and tests because there's no reason to get it wrong when you can check and make sure that you're right. Okay, here I have division. Now remember, if I'm undoing division, I'm using regular multiplication. I'm not multiplying the reciprocal. So make sure that you get those two clear in your head. Do not get confused. To undo multiplication, you have to multiply the reciprocal. To undo division, you multiply by the same number. Don't try to flip it in this case, okay? So here I'm dividing. I'm going to undo that by multiplying. And we're no longer going to use the x for multiplication. Why? Because we're using x's as variables. So I'm left with n on this side. 8 times 1/4. Remember, we can write our 8 over 1. 4 goes into 4 once. 4 goes into 8 2 times. Here I wind up with 2 over 1 or 2. And again, we could take this 2, plug it back in, and check. And we would find out that we are indeed correct. You know what? I'll show you your check here. So we'll plug in our 2. It's division, so we change it to multiplication by multiplying. Wow, that word is just throwing me today. Sorry. Multiplying the inverse, which is 4 over 1 or 4, which does indeed give me 8, so my answer checks out. So kind. Go back to bed. All right, here you'll notice on problem 3, we're multiplying. So to undo multiplication, I now have to use the reciprocal. I'm going to multiply the reciprocal, which is the same as dividing. If that confuses you, go ahead and write it as the division and then change your division. You can do it that way, but this just saves us some time. All right? So over here, those would cancel. I'd be left with just c. Here I'm going to multiply the reciprocal as well. So I'm going to write 21 over 1 so that it's a fraction. 3 goes into 3 once. It goes into 21 7 times. Pay attention here, this is a negative sign, so we also need to pay attention to our positives and our negatives. We need to remember our rules for that as well. So my answer is going to be negative. 7 times 7 gives me 49, and it's going to be over 1, so I'm just going to leave it like this, negative 49. Pay attention to our negative signs as well. All right, over here, and this is the one that throws a lot of kids off. Here we have a division one, but they wrote it like a fraction. So it looks like we have a fraction in a fraction. That might throw some of you off. Don't let it confuse you. They're just saying that we're dividing by negative 1/2. So if you want, we can even rewrite it using our regular division sign so that it doesn't throw you off that way. These two are exactly the same. We've just written this one as a division sign, and that fraction on fraction can get kind of scary sometimes, but I guarantee you you're going to see it later on in math, so work through your fear now. All right, so how am I going to undo my division? I'm going to undo it by multiplying. Now remember, I'm multiplying by my same number this time because it's division that I'm undoing, so I don't want to use the reciprocal. Again, I'm going to erase my problem number here. Multiplying this side by negative 1/2 as well. And remember, pay attention to our signs. It's a negative 1/2, so that's what I have to multiply by. I'm left with g on this side. Here, I'm going to write my 5 over 1. Nothing's going to cancel out here. I have a negative and a negative, so my answer is going to be positive. I'm going to get 5/2, which we could rewrite as 2 1/2 if we wanted, or you can leave it in that form. That's fine. All right, just a couple more examples for you. All right, here again, you'll notice I'm doing multiplication, so I'm going to undo that multiplication by multiplying my reciprocal, okay? That's the same as dividing by 2/3. Dividing by 2/3 is the same as multiplying by 3/2. Keep that in mind. So I'm left with t on this side by 16 over 1. 2 goes into 2 once, it goes into 16 8 times. 8 times 3 is 24. There's my answer. And again, you can always go back and check. And I definitely allow calculators for checking. That's fine, but you should be practicing this math. I want you to get really good at it on your own. I know the calculator can do it. All right, here we have a division, so we're going to undo that division by multiplying. I'm left with c on this side. Pay attention, it was a negative variable, so I'm still multiplying by that negative. So 4 doesn't go into 30 evenly, so I'm going to wind up with negative 34. All right, or if we wanted to change it, we could say, well, 7 1/2 is what it would reduce to, but you can just leave it in that form. That's fine. It saves you one step. All right. Again, if you're struggling with this, go back and rewatch the video. I highly recommend it because in the next video, we're going to look at two-step equations, which could get even more confusing. So if you're struggling with this or the addition and subtraction ones, please go back and rewatch them. Ask all the questions that you need to, and I will answer those for you in class. Have a great night, guys.